Well,
I like that.
As a mother of a teenage boy, I don't like
Really?
that.
That's the most malicious thing I've ever heard.
That is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're not comfortable with.
Yes, people, silent business. Welcome back to another episode of Streets Are Moving Mad.
You're just a messenger.
Don't shoot my bomber, lad. But nah, serious topic. Men should be frightened. That's literally the title, and that's the topic today. Listen, no waste of time. Let's get straight into it. Like, subscribe, share, comment. People, let's do that. You see, you got me even messing up, into the video.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Revelations about disgraced movie director Harvey Weinstein's abuse of women sparked a global reckoning with predatory male behaviour. But 5 years on from what became known as the metoo movement, there's a growing backlash. Some influential people argue it's become divisive, pitting the sexes against each other with an assumption of male guilt, leaving many young men feeling marginalised. Recently, there's been two people at the forefront of that backlash, albeit with very different styles and rationales. He's psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson.
People have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is.
Freedom and them.
And earlier this week, I spoke to Andrew Tate, the so-called toxic male influencer who's now banned from social media. The full explosive interview airs tomorrow night, but here's a little taster of that.
Confident, strong men who stand up and protect and provide for women are a good thing for the world and a good force for the world. And I don't think that I put a magic spell on anybody. I think there's a whole bunch of men in the world who understands my value. And if men grow up to be like me, you're going to have a whole bunch of people with no criminal record, dedicated athletes who protect and provide for the people close to them. Fantastic for the economy. And I'm certainly not the worst influence out here, Piers.
Well, clips of both of those interviews have exploded online. Literally millions of people have been viewing them. Jordan Peterson, for example, the whole interview has been viewed 5.5 million times on our YouTube channels, rightly or wrongly. There's clearly a huge groundswell of interest, at the very least, in their views, if not support. So was Me Too an overdue reckoning, or has it become a damaging battle in a raging culture war? Isabel still with me, political journalist Ava Centine, and conservative commentator, a young man who agrees with Peterson and Andrew Tate, Connor Thomason. Connor, welcome to the show. I'll start with you. I found it very interesting interviewing Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, both very controversial characters in different ways. Both positioned as a kind of kings of toxic masculinity. I certainly didn't think Jordan Peterson was that. And when it came to Andrew Tate, I couldn't really conclude after 90 minutes of grilling him. I gave him quite a hard time. I couldn't really conclude what he had done that was so bad that he had to be expunged from social media life altogether. But it showed me the sensitivity around all this. And if any man now behaves in a way that looks like it's toxic masculinity, bang, they're expunged. Is in that process masculinity itself getting expunged and demonized?
I would say so. I mean, I'm sure that you'll have this experience with your own relationships, Piers, in that women, if you say something controversial, whether it's something on the Peterson side of the spectrum or on the Tate side of the spectrum, a little bit more explosive or a little bit more academic, some women are very much drawn to a man who can be a bit more confrontational, say exactly what he thinks. It's the verbal new version of what gladiators used to do in the arena way back.
Well, certainly, I think Ava and Isabel are laughing because they know that they're drawn to me in that way because of my combative nature. But Ava, you're smirking and laughing. I mean, there's a serious point here. A lot of young men feel they're getting disenfranchised by society. They're all being over-demonized, that any attempt to be the traditional male figure is now being rubbished and called toxic.
Well, I mean, if you really felt that and you really went out there and you were an alpha male, then you wouldn't be bothered about a bunch of women telling you that you were.
Well, you wouldn't if you get cancelled, like Andrew Tate. If you get banned from.
I mean, he's hardly been cancelled. He was on your program, which is on national television.
But it's the only platform actually he's had for a long time because all the social media companies banned him, literally banned him. He had his email gone, his Google gone, his Facebook gone. It all went down like dominoes.
Well, he's still on there, very, very prolific on there. I can't move for clips of him.
Yeah, but they're not generated by him now.
Well, but that's been for quite some time.
But should he be punished that way?
But what is punished? What is punished?
Punished is where companies take a decision which, in my view, in this case, was perverse because they still allow, for example, the Ayatollah of Iran to have a Twitter account.
Yes.
So there's no consistency here at all.
Well, but however, we love a bit of free market. I'm sure you do, judging by that suit, which is lovely. But, you know, social media companies are private companies.
You're not
they can do whatever they can do.
I'll
whatever
take all the
they like.
objectification I like.
Of course you will, yeah. All right, Isabel.
But Ava, your point about, if men were that alpha, then they wouldn't be that bothered by this, doesn't really help us when it comes to boys growing up. And that is one of my worries, that for teenage boys now, they are so terrified of the consequences of putting a foot out of line. It's hard enough being a young teenager, working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you
listen, I'm telling you, that woman's got blood in her eyes. That woman wants...
The feminism is strong in this one.
in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
See, I
and there
like
is
that
far
terror.
too much. Well,
I like that.
As a mother of a teenage boy, I don't like that terror.
I do.
Most thing I've ever
That
heard.
is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're not comfortable with.
But we're talking about
Yeah, but we're not
teenagers,
talking about. We're not
children.
talking about.
We're talking
yeah, but
about
it's an
young
interesting
children.
thing that you see. I would say that attitude actually is part of the problem too.
Yo, the attitude is part of the problem. I'm telling you, this woman is drawing for blood. Like, it's madness. It's absolute madness even thinking like that. You understand? Like, men have a hard life out here as it is. Please don't pile on the pressure and make it more difficult. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Yeah? Like, the men that are doing stuff for themselves, it's already difficult. The men that ain't doing nothing for... Come on. And let's talk about that experiment. I forgot what her name is. Where that woman literally transitioned to become a man for a whole, 18 months or something like that. You understand? She tried what it was like to live as a man. You understand? And after this episode was done, this woman ended up killing herself.
That's to me toxic femininity.
It is.
That is saying you should all be terrified, you men, if you put one.
Assaulting.
Well, I think we all understand what sexual
What is
assault
an
is.
assault?
What Isabel's talking about is that young teenage clumsiness
really
in many
hard.
cases, which is now being recategorized as assault. Is that a problem?
It's not being recategorized as assault. It's always been assault. It's just we're finally talking about it.
I don't agree with that.
That's
But
ridiculous.
Teenage boy fumbling with
a touch
teenage
on the
girl is
knee.
not,
Not
it's
even
not
that.
in most cases assault, is
Do
it?
you remember Aziz Ansari, right? Half the heels of Me Too, half the heels of Harvey Weinstein, rightly being dragged through the courts and should have got way worse than just prison time, in my opinion. Aziz Ansari had a consensual relationship with a woman. She felt a bit awkward and afterwards rescinded consent and he was lumped in and he had his
No,
career
I'm with you on that one.
cancelled.
I'm with
So
you.
then why should men be afraid of that?
Because he didn't touch her without consent, did he?
No, but she rescinded his consent and
how are
she
young
saw that
boys
then
supposed to navigate
something.
this, the whole
Yeah, I
thing?
agree.
I'm thinking
You
of
need to
my
have-
teenage son. He's 14, 15. What's he supposed to say? Would you mind if I put
Isabel,
my
you are an
hand-
extremely
come
strong
on,
woman. I
come
know
on.
in your house you're teaching them the difference between assault and then coming on to someone. I know you are.
But what we're talking about is it's been very interesting watching the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, how it's all developed. Because a lot of very bad people, Harvey Weinstein and others, got their due comeuppance. We can all agree with that.
Yeah.
This is not even something to be debated. We're really talking about the grey line, right? Where is that grey line? How do you navigate it? When you're an experienced adult and you've been around the block in many ways, you can navigate that much more intelligently and with emotional intelligence than you can if you're a teenage boy. And I think the point Isabel makes is a good one. I've had 3 sons in their 20s. I've always taught them to be respectful to women. I believe they are.
Listen, I agree with Pierce and I also disagree. Yeah, be respectful to women. You understand? Be respectful to men too. There's no point going around disrespecting people. You understand? At the end of the day, this is the part that I disagree and also agree. I know it's madness. Where it's like, I get it. Where you're an adult, you can navigate certain things better when it comes to, interaction with females and stuff like that. But guess what? Even as a young man are actually doing brilliant navigation. They got brilliant navigation skills. Guess what they're doing? Most young men are at home playing FIFA or Fortnite or Call of Duty or something. You understand where I'm coming from? So they even are trying to avoid the madness on the street with the so-called drillings, so to speak. You understand? And obviously I'm not trying to put bad connotation on drill. Brilliant music. I love it. You understand? But then you have the young females, where are they? A lot of them are on road, doing God knows what, practicing thottery. I don't know. But you understand where I'm coming from. And young men, a lot of young men actually even afraid to approach young women. You understand? So they actually got brilliant navigation skills. But the problem is with that, right? Because SA is as easy as looking at someone for far too long. You couldn't be done for SA for looking at someone for far too long. Compliment a female in the workplace, if she's not attracted to you or she don't like you or she finds you a weirdo, that's you done. Like the lines are absolutely blurred. There's absolute power on one side, but no power on the next. Like women say they need to be protected, which we all agree, but how much protection do you need? Or your sons are the ones that are going through these madness. They're the ones that are developing mental health. When they're being masculine, it's classed as toxic masculinity. When females are in their toxic femininity, it's called go queen. It's a madness. Freedom and them.
You've been around the block in many ways. You can navigate that much more intelligently and with emotional intelligence than you can if you're a teenage boy. And I think the point Isabel makes is a good one. I've had 3 sons in their 20s. I've always taught them to be respectful to women. I believe they are. But I do think it's really hard for a 16, 17-year-old boy now in this environment to know even how to start
they are all
having
terrified.
kind of some kind of physical relationship with a woman.
Those good boys are all terrified. I know that from talking to my son. He's just like, I'm just not going there. Is that healthy?
Yes, I think it is actually. I think it's better to not have a physical relationship than to have one that could ruin a woman's life.
But then how do they ever start?
Well, don't. If you're not 100% sure,
What are we going
don't.
for?
What are you going to have? A bunch of neutered
Celebrate.
boys who
But
never
it's
had...
so obvious.
We actually do
It's
have that.
like-
Gen Z having far less sexual relationships
Yes,
than any.
they are. It's true.
And
Young
hang
people
on,
have stopped having sex.
I agree with the first part of your sentence, actually. If you're not willing to have a sexual relationship with clearly defined lines, don't have one. And so I actually told my mates at university, don't sleep around with girls. 1, girls don't bring a guy home that you don't know what he's capable of. 2, guys, don't bring a girl home if you think that possibly she could have a false accusation against you.
Can I make another point here?
Which I
think
find, I mean, look, that
wrong.
sentence to me, when I was your age, right? How old are you?
23.
23. When I was your age, the idea you would even have that sort of thought process.
Yeah, I
would
wouldn't
be
have those sort of mates that would ever cross the line, so I wouldn't have to have that
I never said
conversation
my
with any of
mates.
my friends.
Don't throw my mates in with a bunch of violent people.
And is there a certain purity here I'm detecting in a certain type of feminist who thinks that they're all unimpeachable and that this is all one-way traffic and that only men can be toxic?
No, I
Because I've
don't
got to enlighten you. I've met quite a few women in my life who are pretty toxic themselves, and I don't see the debate being framed around that at all.
No, but the point is that we're still in a situation where only 5% of rape cases actually even go to trial.
Which is ridiculous.
But that's the extreme end of it,
Yeah.
isn't
The
it?
idea-
You're talking
but
about
I'm
rape
talking
here.
about-
But we can all agree that's wrong. We can all agree that's wrong.
But okay, so even on the extreme end of it, rape doesn't even go to trial. If you're assaulted, and that is life changing.
Yeah.
What happened to Rose McGowan
Yeah.
with Harvey
I
Weinstein?
know Rose well.
Was
Yeah, but
life
these are
changing,
extreme
and
things.
she didn't get her comeuppance.
Yeah, but
She
Ava, we'd
lost
all
her
agree about
career.
that. Well, I think what has sent a shudder through all of our spines from your mouth today is the line that all young men should be terrified of any physical
assaulting
contact.
someone.
Well, no, you didn't say it like
didn't
that.
say that.
You said basically of starting any physical contact with a
Unless
woman.
you're sure.
Well,
Unless
how
you're
does a
How are you
16,
supposed to
17-year-old
be
boy
sure?
know?
When she can rescind consent on something completely nebulous.
Okay, can I ask you this? If
Yes.
you were going to take someone to bed and you weren't 100% sure that they wanted to go to bed with you,
Yes.
would you go
No,
with them?
I would not do that.
Then
But the
that's what
point
I'm
was,
talking
Aziz
about.
Ansari was sure, for example, and then later she went and published a long piece about
Right.
how she regretted it and lumped him in with Harvey Weinstein.
I mean,
Is that okay?
Ava,
No.
we're-
Ava, do you
we're-
feel any of it, Ava's gone too far? Do you think the pendulum has gone too far at all?
No, I don't. I don't think it's gone far enough, actually.
Really?
But I don't think we've brought anything into schools. To your point, we haven't brought any teaching into school about what is assault, what isn't. If you're worried about like 16-year-old boys not understanding what it is, bring in sexual health lessons.
Hang on.
Teach it.
The
Well,
idea,
that's all
sorry,
of
the idea that you can teach rapists not to rape is insane because they already know
What do you mean?
that it's a big. Okay, right. You're saying if boys wouldn't know what's assault and what isn't.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. The idea that rather than taking the power out of someone who can make a false accusation is what they're actually, most of them are concerned about. Specifically, my friends, for example, who would never dream of doing something like that. But then what the feminists fail to understand is you can educate
The
evils.
feminists.
Did you not identify?
That is barbaric to even think like that. I'm telling you, that is barbaric to think that young men do not know what grape is. As I said from before, young men are in their house playing games. If young men did not know what grape is, do you honestly think parents would be letting their daughters out of homes? Do you think females would be going out late night clubbing, intoxicated with alcohol, claiming say they're walking home alone or walking home with 1-2 friends? That is absolutely barbaric statement. Young men are very responsible. Young men, they tend not to go where danger is. Do you understand? Young women, they live life on easy mode. They're wearing God-slayed armor. They go where all the danger is and think they're entitled to security. It's a madness. Nobody should be touching anybody inappropriately. It's a madness out here. And let me show you what's another madness. When a female can give you consent and you sleep together, and then if she's not sure about you or maybe where this is gonna go, or maybe you fling her out of the yard after, she can rescind consent and get you done. Like, what?
Listen.
These are our sons here.
Yes, people, silent business. You know what time it is. I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot.